before I got into recovery, um, you would never have got 1% of that information out of me. But it actually helps my program to talk about it as much as hopefully it helps the people that are in the room listening.
Could you explain to me what led to your addiction? Like, was there a specific event or a series of events that led to your addiction?
I do, I do honestly have a belief that I was born with an addictive gene of some description. Um, but when I was speaking to this neuroscientist student about it, she said that addiction isn't necessarily genetic. She believes, or she proved, that it was a build up of learnt behaviours, which I kind of struggled with because it's not like I saw my parents and that doing drugs and drinking alcohol to excess the way I did. Now, in retrospect, I can see it because my default setting when I was drinking and using, if you'd upset me, I would make it my sole purpose in life, sorry about my language, to fuck you up. Yeah, if it meant I'd try and get you fired, I'd try and screw your marriage up, whatever. I was nasty. I was a horrible person. I didn't like that, and I didn't like that about myself. Well, I traced that back, and this isn't pointing the finger at my father, but my mother caught me in the kitchen stabbing a chair with a pen, and she told my father. So my father went and got my remote control car and made me sit there while he smashed it to pieces with a hammer. So my learnt behaviour is attack, attack, attack. So I kind of get what she meant by that. But there's no, I can't, my drinking and using, although it was always to excess and not a normal level, started off pretty much for fun. You know, I did it for fun. I didn't do it because, yes, there was abuse in my childhood, but that was very early on. You know, I was abused when I was 4 to 6. I didn't drink until I was 11, 14, 15, that sort of time. So it wasn't like that triggered. I don't believe that that was the trigger as such. You know, I did just like drinking. I liked to get out of my face.
Mm. So, how would you define in your own words addiction?
That's a tricky question. So addiction for me was doing the same thing over and over again, expecting a different result. It's like the first time you take cocaine is the best high I ever had in my life. For the next 29 years, I was chasing that high, knowing I was never going to get it, taking more and more, chasing it, but knowing full well I was never actually going to reach that. But the insanity was I couldn't stop myself from doing it. When I was when I picked up gambling as a secondary addiction in recovery, I found myself feeding a machine with £20 notes to the point where it was physically impossible for me to win back what I was putting in, but couldn't physically stop myself from just feeding it. I mean, I could physically stop myself, but I had that urge to not stop, just to keep feeding it, feeding it, feeding it. But I wasn't watching the machine. I wasn't. It was a roulette machine, so I wasn't watching it to see where the ball ended. I was just putting the money in, and then just I had to put that money in. I didn't want to see the end result. I didn't have to win. I just had to.
Could you try to explain this urge emotionally or like the thoughts that you had at the time?
First, it was just chasing the high. Like when it was drugs and alcohol, it was just chasing the high. But I think as my addiction evolved, it then was to mask what I was doing to chase that high. You know, I prostituted myself. You know, I slept with men and women for money to feed my addiction. I stole from people I dearly loved. I lied to just about everybody in my life. and I couldn't stop myself from doing it. I had to do that to feed this constant urge that was just unexplainable. It's really hard to explain.
Well, was it more of a conscious or unconscious decision?
In the beginning, conscious, but I think each time was kind of different. So I was a constant, once when my addiction was in full blown addiction, I was a constant user, which meant I was never sober for 20 years. I always had alcohol in my system. I always had a drug of some description in my system. But when a bender had finished, although I still had all of this stuff in my system, the bender had finished, then you start reflecting on what had just gone on, and the regret and the guilt and the shame and everything's like come to light. Then that kicks off the next one. So it was conscious but unconscious, if that makes sense.
If I understood it well, also you're saying that it became worse and worse
Oh yeah,
over time.
without a doubt. I mean, I laughed. I used to smoke weed, and I'd hear people say I started smoking weed, and then it had progressed, and I ended up injecting heroin. And I just found that laughable. And it took a while. I mean, it took a long while for my addiction to go from just alcohol to social, but to excess using of cocaine. Then, when I was at one of my lowest points, I was finding blister packs of whatever it was. I don't even know what it was. To this day, I couldn't tell you what it was. I'd find it on the sidewalk, just pick it up and take it. Didn't care what it was. It could have been dog worming tablets. It could have been HRT. It could have been something that could have killed me. I did not care. I just wanted something not to feel.
Some might describe it as, yeah, you're running away from a trauma or some feeling that you're trying to avoid or cover up by doing that.
Yes, but the irony in that is I was running away from what I was creating. So I hated what I was feeling. But in order to get rid of that, I needed to take what was making me feel like that, if that makes any sense.
Yeah. So when and how did you realize that you had an addiction?
I'd known, I think, when I started drinking in the morning, and for me that was really fast. So everybody else would go home, I would go home and drink. I would wake up in the morning and drink. A guy I used to work with when I was an apprentice, me and him would go out during the first break, which was 10 a.m, and we'd go and have a can of beer. I'd be smoking weed and have a bit of coke on me. I always had something. I was known for that. Sometimes, in the beginning, that's what people kind of liked about me. One, because I always supplied them with it, but I was also this funny guy that had this, always had something on him, and always had like a laugh and a joke and this, that, and the other. So I always knew that I took things way to excess. The defining moment when I knew. So my first wife, she said to me, like, when we bought our first house, just drink at night, just when you come home, just have like 4 cans, because I was always drinking. Okay, and then after a while, I was poking the cans down the sofa, and hiding them here, or drinking 8 before I got home, so there was only ever 4 in the fridge. And I knew that's not normal, but when I started doing the really shameful things, that's when I knew that it had gone way beyond problem, drinking and using, way beyond.
Was it at the moment where you had this awareness, kind of, that you started thinking, you need to get help now?
That took a long time, because my first wife and I always wanted children. She said I could not have children with you because of your drinking. And I said, look, I'll give up drinking when we've had the baby, so that I can wet the baby's head. When the baby's born, go out with the lads down the pub but she knew it wouldn't stop at that. And I was terrified. I was terrified of not having that. I was terrified of having to grow up, having to be normal, if you like, because I didn't know how to be normal. You know, I couldn't have a conversation. I couldn't even speak to someone like this. I would have to turn it round into sarcasm, joke, or whatever. I couldn't have a conversation because I was always thinking, I wonder if she's got any money in her pocket, you know, her purse is over there, you know, I'll distract her. You know, I always had this. It didn't matter what situation I was in. I couldn't get drugs and alcohol out of my head. And I also couldn't imagine life without having that train of thought. So it scared me. It scared me. The defining moment when I thought I need help was completely different.
So, what was the thing then that pushed you towards seeking help?
You know what? I can't tell you the answer to that. There is no answer. All I remember, so my older brother Alex, who we grew up together. Sorry, start from the beginning quick. My father was an armed robber. None of us knew. The police came into the house, raided the house. I'm 6. No, I was 8. My brother was nearly 10. And I had 2 younger siblings. They take my father away. My mother just goes and gets a truck, empties the house of everything, takes my younger siblings and goes and leaves me and my older brother in the house. We weren't found for 3 weeks. Yeah. So me and Alex have always had a real bond, which meant I treated him worse than I did anybody. Even though I loved him, I treated him worse than anybody. He gave up on me, but he never gave up on me. It was kind of like tough love, and it really fucking hurt him, you know. He could see what I was doing to myself and what I was doing to him, but he was more bothered about what I was doing to myself. And when I was homeless, he came and found me, and he took me to a concert, one of my favourite artists, Paul Weller, down in the country where we used to live. And we were in a bar, and there was no talk. I've never talked about getting help or anything. He was just trying to help out his younger brother, you know, and I was just standing in this bar, and I can't explain it. I can't explain it. I just stood there and I went, Al, you got a minute? And we walked outside. Sorry, I was starting to get emotional. We walked outside and I said, I can't fucking do this anymore. And he said to me, when I don't know how many years I've waited to hear you say that. And we both broke down, and that was the Friday. Monday I went to the doctor. The doctor sent me somewhere else, and I went somewhere else, and got the ball rolling. Sorry, got the ball rolling.
No, I mean, that's beautiful. Thank you for sharing that. And I imagine it must have been really hard for you back then.
You know what? It's harder for the people around the addict than it is the addict, because we're medicated. We don't know what the fuck we're doing.
Yeah, but what about having to deal with it afterwards?
You do have to deal with it after, but you get patted on the back for not being a fucking arsehole anymore. You know, so you've been an arsehole. Put your family through hell. You've had your family have to make some of the most heart-wrenching, hardest decisions of their lives. Like my ex-partner's mum and dad said to me, Danny, what do we do? And I said, look, I'm going to tell you the answer, but if I was given this answer, I don't know if I could do the same. You've got to cut her off. Stop paying her rent. Stop doing it. They said, we can't see our daughter homeless. I said, then you'll see her dead. That's a decision that your parents or your loved ones have got to make. You're drunk. You don't fucking know about any of that. Yeah? They're the ones that have to make that decision. And the horrible part of that is, if they choose to make that decision, some people go past that, so they die. anyway. And then the parents or loved ones are like, I'm responsible for that. We don't know, we're dead, we're in the fucking ground, you know. So it is harder for the loved ones than it is the addict. Because we always do get pat on the back when we go and try and make amends. You know, oh, you turned your life around, I'm so proud of you. You know, but what about what they've gone through? They don't get that.
I wanted to talk about the recovery part of your journey as well. So, once you started seeking help, do you remember at the time what was the hardest thing for you to realize that you have to let go of the past and of the drugs and the alcohol?
When I walked out of my father's house, I was staying there before I went to the detox. We had a toxic relationship, we used together and everything. We walked out of there, and his parting words to me were, "You're nothing but the shit on my shoes." At 6 o'clock in the morning, I'm walking out with a trash bag with my clothes in. I get on the train. I'm drinking the whole way there. I'm taking cocaine the whole way at 6 a.m. People going to work, and there's this like savage in the corner just drinking and doing drugs. I don't know how I didn't get arrested or whatever. I get into the detox, and it was when they started talking about the medication they're going to put me on and everything. This fear of the unknown hit me. I haven't been sober my whole life. I haven't been clean my whole life. What the fuck am I going to do? My coping mechanism, everything taken away. I was terrified, absolutely terrified. That was the detox. When I came out of detox, my mother picked me up. She had to get special permission to take me from detox to rehab because the doctors and the specialists said there's no way we are going to let Danny go from there to there on his own. Danny's going to use. We don't trust him. We're putting a lot of money into him. We don't trust him. So my mum got permission. She's a doctor. And my mum said she saw me walk out of detox, get in her car, and we were driving there, and she said she just saw this confident, healthy looking. I had colour in my face, my complexion had changed and everything. And my phone rang on the drive. And what had happened, where I'd been in detox for a month, you get made house leader and that, you get a little bit more trust. And I'd seen someone passing medication to another client, and I pulled them to one side and I saw that, don't do it again. And I passed it on to the next person who took over my role. I said, look, don't tell the management, but just keep an eye on them. And the management was the one that phoned me and said, Danny, why didn't you tell us? And my mum said, she said, I saw you crumble from confident and everything. You just crumbled in a phone call in that car. So then I went into rehab. Now I'm like, I felt like I'd gone backwards. I felt like I was doing really well and I'd progressed. And then I went into rehab and I'd just been caught out lying. So I felt like all the good I'd done for that month had been taken away, and I was ready to run away. 3 days in, I was going to run away. I was looking for a reason to run away, but it was just fear, just complete fear.
Do you think that the environment of the rehab center matters?
To me, it doesn't. Now, it depends who you are. It depends how much you want it. I was actually at the point, even though I was full of fear, I was ready to run away. I think part of my reasoning for going to rehab, and I'm going to be 100% honest, was I'd made a commitment to my brother when I went, I'm going to get help, and I didn't want to let him down. So to walk out of there, I'd go back to this fuck up instead of someone who was trying to make it work. Was I 100% committed when I went in there? I don't know. I wasn't. But I'm stubborn. And I do care what people think of me to a degree. So I honestly just didn't want to let my brother down. But when I went to rehab, I knew nothing about it. That's a good thing, to know nothing about it. I knew nothing about the 12 steps. I didn't know there was God involved. I didn't have it wasn't a nice room. It wasn't like I had a luxury rehab. It was an ex-nunnery. There were 18 rooms, shared bathroom, wood chip wallpaper, There was structure that if you didn't abide by it, you're out. If you relapsed at 2 o'clock in the morning, you're out on the street at 2 o'clock in the morning. It was hard, but it taught me some fantastic lessons. Relapse is such a dark word for me, because in there, when someone relapsed at 2 o'clock in the morning, everybody was woken up, taken into this room, and then said, right, Danny's relapsed, we put them outside if anyone's got. So the word relapse had a real dark connotation for me. So that helped build up my urge to get clean, seeing all the failures, not failures, that's the wrong word, seeing the people go back out there.
Do you think that there are people that cannot be helped or saved from their addiction?
People can only get into recovery if they want to. I have my phone number here is the one on Google, so I get the phone calls from people that want to come. And a lot of people ask, are you a lock-in facility? No, we're not. They ask if do I know of one? And I say, look, before I get to that, it's pointless. It's pointless sending anybody to a lock-in facility. If they don't want it, we can give you solid platinum toolkit. If you don't use it, there's no magic spell. You have to want it.
So after rehab, how do you adjust back to normal life outside? Like, what would an advice be that you would give to a recovering addict regarding that?
So a lot of people disagree with me in my approach. You've got sayings in the fellowship, just for today and one day at a time. Because of my past, because of the fact that I've been dishonest for the most part of my life, because I've been a manipulator most of my life, I know that I can twist anything to my benefit. So those sayings to me are dangerous. So just for today means maybe tomorrow. One day at a time means there's another day that possibly I could. So I say to people, make the decision. Make the decision. A lot of people struggle throughout their recovery with surrender. 11 years ago, I made the decision, this is what I want. I don't want to go back there. I don't ever have to revisit that. I don't. Then I say to people about meetings. I don't like meetings, AA, NA meetings. I don't. But I know that they're very important in the early days. Now, if you go to them too long, they become the opposite. They actually become unhelpful because I always use the term, recovery is to be enjoyed, not endured.
One more thing I'd like to ask is if you think whether there's something people get wrong about addiction or addicts or even recovery. Is there something you wish people would understand better?
People that are in active addiction, it's not as bad as you think. Yeah, there is life without drugs. There is life without alcohol, and actually, it's a really good one. You know, having a lot of people think, oh, got to tell people I'm an alcoholic. The actual stigma behind that title, alcoholic, addict, whatever it is, isn't there nowadays. It actually becomes a badge of honour. Some employees will only employ people in recovery. You go to the top of the list. If you're in recovery, you're not going to be the one phoning up on a Monday morning hungover. If you're in recovery, you're not going to be embezzling from the company because one of the biggest foundations of recovery is honesty. You're going to be one of the most dedicated members of staff there. A lot of people in recovery, to feed their addiction, have juggled. I had to juggle lives that were 20 years old. You realise the amount of effort and skill or ability it takes to do that. So if you don't have to do that now, just think what you can put all of that effort and that into. You become top of the list now, so it's no longer a stigma. It actually really pays off. Um, Anyone that wants to seek in recovery, give it a go. Give it a go, because you've given the drugs a go, you've given the alcohol a go, give recovery a go.